When I'm talking to business owners, they often get themselves so screwed up, so confused that is it any wonder that they want to go back and get a job? Is it any wonder that they think that actually maybe this was a bad idea? Well, today's podcast, we're going to be talking about 4 areas I think that reduce the resistance between you and your ideal customers. And I want to talk about this because in the work I do, I often see this problem. It happens all the time. So I'm talking about it today in the hopes that some people get this and save themselves a lot of stress, frustration, and money, but also because anybody who's thinking about joining my program will listen to this and realize I've got to do these 4 things, whether they buy from it or not. So, the reality is if you're a business owner or a small business, or even a small marketing department in a business, you have limitations. You have, budget limitations, you have manpower limitations, you have technical skill limitations. All of those things come to play in what you can do to market your business, whether it's you on your own or you in a small team. There are real limitations on what you can do. Now, let's just flip for a moment and talk about somebody like Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola has hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people in their marketing department, billions of budget, and a raft of agencies and experts that they can call in specific things to get that done. So they find marketing easier because they have the resources to do it. And they are also marketing a number of different products. So there is kind of a lot of advantages to having a huge company with big budgets and big manpower and lots of expertise. But if you're not that, you can't play that game. Now, I know I'm talking obvious here, but you'd be surprised how many people try to play a Coca-Cola game. By that, I mean, they don't have the technical capability. They don't have the resources. They don't have the manpower. And so what they do is they try to take on a strategy and it doesn't matter, this can be LinkedIn, it can be email marketing, it can be TikTok, it can be whatever. They don't have the resources to actually deliver it. And so it's doomed to fail. And instead of trying to play that game, they avoid becoming the challenger, the underdog, and approaching it like an underdog. And I've always had this mentality of I don't have budget. I came from a very poor background, so I didn't have, loads of money. My parents working class, so I didn't have, the network, the resources to kind of do a lot of this stuff. So I've always adopted the mentality is the budget is 0. What can we do? And for most businesses, particularly now, money's a bit tough, the economy's not great, there's all sorts of uncertainty going on. You have to think about how can I play this game like the underdog? And that means about focus, or like an insurgent, yeah? So by that I mean, how can we do something in a way that is effective but actually doesn't require us to play the same game? And probably an insensitive example, but I'll give you an example of this is, you look at how the British and Americans fought in Iraq and Afghanistan. They had overwhelming support. They had troop numbers. They had technical skills. They had resources, equipment. They had more experience. The Allied forces in Afghanistan and in Iraq had way more in terms of capability than the insurgency who was fighting them. Now, the insurgency could have said, well, we need to get more technical ability. We need to get more troops. We need to get more, all of this stuff to try and play the same game to fight the Allies. And instead, what they did is fought a completely different battle at the place where the Allies couldn't. By being very targeted and hitting them in all different places, it was very difficult to fight them. So if you're a small business, you have to think like an insurgent, or you have to think like an underdog. And how do I make maximum impact with what I've got? What's in my hand? And people don't think this way. And so what happens is they just automatically go playing the game that everybody else is playing, and don't think, I'm basically having to compete with other people. How can I fight my battle, carve out my corner, create my space in terms of marketing, in terms of brand, that doesn't compete with everybody else, but I can do. And there's 4 parts to it I want to talk about today. 4 parts to basically building that insurgent brand, that insurgent personal brand where you're not playing to the games of other people. And I want to give you some examples of games. Yep. There's a game in town on social media. Let me tell you what that game is. The game in town is, I will blow up, become an influencer, get loads of traction, and sell my shit. That is a game in town. And you can play that game. And as long as you've got the commitment, the dedication, the time to research, the learning, the adapting, and the willingness to go for a significant period without making money, if you want to play that game, you can play that game. I've always advocated for people not to play that game because of the risk. The risk in that game is, what if that doesn't come off? What if in 2 years' time, because the average person playing that game takes about 17 months to actually get to a profitable position. What if that game doesn't play out? It doesn't work. And I've invested 17 months and I've got nowhere. It's a perfectly legitimate thing. The other thing is, you never know, even when you get there, if it will work. By that, I mean, you could do everything right, but there are so many influencers with conversion problems. So they've got lots of traffic, attention, engagement, followers, but they don't convert it very well. This is common across the internet, and I think I wrote an article maybe 2 weeks ago about an influencer with 2 million followers. Every post, we die for her engagement. We literally, rip off our arm and sell our arm for the engagement she gets. She launched some t-shirts. She couldn't sell 36. Right? 2 million followers. She couldn't sell 36 t-shirts. So there is no guarantee with some of these, what I call moonshot strategies, because it's like, I'm going to become famous and then all my problems will be solved. It's like, it's not serious. But if you go on social media, you'll see millions of people trying to play that game. Millions of people, rather than going, is this the best way to play it? So if we think about that, there's lots of different games in town. You've got to find a way to make it work for you, knowing you are the underdog. There are competitors ahead of you. There are competitors behind you. There are noise. There's noise in your industry. There's economic uncertainty. You've got to find a way to navigate that and be the underdog brand to win the clients and build the business. You can't just play everybody else's game because they're experts at their game. You've got to be expert at yours. So there's four principles I often talk about with people as how they can reduce the resistance between them and their ideal clients. If you think about it, if you can reduce the friction between your target market and you, then it gets easier to close sales, to win clients. If you can reduce all those obstacles between them saying no and saying yes, you win more clients. Now, what happens is, in many, many cases, we focus on the top of funnel. We focus on the stuff that will actually get us attention and never work through how do we actually knock out these barriers that stop us getting clients. So the 4 areas that I always work with people, whether it be building an email list, building their LinkedIn presence, whether it be their content, whether it be their brand, I am doing these 4 things. And some people have to go round and round in circles because it can fuck with your mind when you start to do this, because the basic instincts of human nature of what if this, what if that, what I might lose, the fear of loss is huge. Yeah. So let me just walk you through these big challenges. So the first, and they all kind of accumulate to make it so that you have as little friction between you and somebody buying as possible. And so they see, your ideal clients see, number one, this is the right service or product for me. I trust this person that they can help me achieve a result. I want to get this problem solved because it's hurting me quite a bit. And I'm ready to take action. You need those things. And the more you reduce the friction, the resistance between you and your ideal clients, the better it will be. So let's start out. Now, all of these 4 mix together. So they all intertwine, but I'm going to deal with them as separate points. So the first one is, do you actually know what you're selling? Do you really know what you're selling? And you might think, oh, God, Dean, of course I know what I'm selling. I don't think you do. I don't think many people do. The reason people buy from you, is because they have a problem, a specific, definable problem, and they want it fixed. So that is the reason they buy. And they need that problem fixed because the cost of doing nothing is worse than the cost of doing something. You know this. I know this. A lot of my ideal clients are not in enough pain to actually take action. And so the cost of paying me money to work with me versus doing nothing, it's not hurting enough. It's not uncomfortable enough for them, right? So we have to show them that we have a solution to them when they are ready to stop living with that pain or that discomfort or that frustration. They have to be motivated to want to take action. And I always talk about it like it has to be hurting enough to want to leave where they are and exciting enough that they want to go to somewhere else. It's both things. They have to want to be somewhere else and they have to want to leave where they are. Because there's a lot of people who want to build a better business, who want more money in their pocket, who want a system to bring them clients. They want all of those things, but they're doing all right. They're doing all right, and they're happy to do all right. So it's not uncomfortable enough for them to go, do you know what? I can't keep doing this. I'm going to go after that. So there has to be this healthy tension between discomfort with where they are and a strong desire to get to somewhere else. If you have one or the other, and one of them's missing, you don't have enough motivation for people to buy. So yes, you have to talk to pain points, but you have to speak to where people want to get to too. And this brings me to the main point of this. If you don't know what problem you're solving, you cannot clearly articulate that and explain where they are and where they want to be. Now, I meet business owners all the time, and they'll say to me, yeah, well, I can help people do this, and I can help people do that, and I can help people do the other. And that's great. But how do you package that and make it clear for people to understand when you can do 3, 4, 5, 10 things for 10 different decision makers? How do you actually communicate the value? How do they see the value? Because what happens is we try to include everybody in what we're selling. So I'm not talking about target audience here. I'm talking about what we're actually selling. We try our offer, the package of how we proposition our services, the way we put it together to communicate it. What we end up doing is basically trying to catch everybody or a good chunk of the market. And so our offer cannot speak to a specific problem or a specific outcome people want. And I'll give you an example. I was working with a client and they said to me they wanted to help people grow their revenue in their business. And I said, okay, what kind of businesses? Well, I can do these businesses, these businesses, these businesses, these businesses. I said, yeah, but how do you communicate the value and the relevance of that offer when you can say you can target that company, those types of companies over here, cybersecurity? Oh, but you can also target startup financial services businesses. How do you communicate the relevance and the value to those two different businesses at the same time? And they said, well, we're just going to create one offer and try and sell it to both. And I said, well, how do you clearly articulate that this is relevant to them? Because when you start talking about it, you'll have to go, oh, well, it's for cybersecurity and oh, it's for financial services. And so every key benefit, every deliverable within that service will have to be like genericized to be relevant to both. Yeah, we've done that. And we're still working through it. I said, well, why don't you just focus on one? And they were like, you could see their face was going blank. Like, why would we do that? Why would we exclude a market? Why would we lose out on all those sales? And this is what they didn't get and what most people don't get. When you try to sell the same offer and you try and appeal to different people with the offer becomes generic. It becomes standard. It becomes template. And neither of those two groups can see how that helps them so clearly that it makes it easy for them to say yes. So when we're building what we're selling, we have to paint a picture of what the end result will be. What's the goal that they want to get to? And what's the problem that this offer is going to solve? It all starts with what's the problem. And that can't be they're struggling to grow their business. Who's struggling to grow their business? Okay, why are they struggling to grow their business? Yeah, people can be struggling to grow their business because it's a tough economy. People can be struggling to grow their business because they don't understand social media. People can be struggling to grow their business because their industry is in change. People can be struggling to grow their business because they don't have manpower. There are loads of reasons why that problem happens, but you have to focus on one particular reason. So if I'm thinking about this and going, I'm struggling to grow my business. I'm not getting the quality of clients. I'm not getting the referrals. I'm not getting the leads that I used to get. We used to get loads of leads, right? Now, that's my problem. If you then started to say, has all the referrals dried up? If you're a referral-based business, I've got a way to create more referrals in your business in the next 60 days. I look at that and go, where's all our referrals? We used to get tons of referrals. Why have they all dried up? Oh, wow, this organization, this company, this person helps me get better referrals from our existing customers, even if your referrals have dried up. Wow, I need that. But if I just got a generic message of grow your business, it doesn't speak to me. It doesn't speak to my specific problem. It doesn't speak to the causes of my problem. It's just generic. And whilst the fix we might offer, the solution might be, I'll just say this for a minute, right? I can help business owners. I can help cybersecurity companies. I can help sales teams. I can help marketers. I can help CEOs. I can help a ton of people, right? Tons and tons of people. But when I'm communicating what I sell, I am focused on a particular group of people because I know if I try and talk to everybody, it just won't work. So whilst Maverick, my company, has big presence in the big B2B and corporate world, and that's what it does. We train sales teams, we train marketing teams. We've worked with some of the biggest companies in the world. I've worked with some of the biggest companies in the world. That's what Maverick does. But Dean, I talk in my content, in what I do, to small business owners because that's my market. That's what I'm selling online. I am selling that. So I speak to the problems that business owners have, particularly around LinkedIn, particularly about building their personal brand to make it profitable, particularly around how they can build email lists and also make that profitable, how they use their content to help them win clients and build their brand. I am pretty focused on what I'm selling and to who, and that starts with a clear offer that speaks to a particular problem, a very defined problem. Now, the logic is, if I say I help people grow their business, I get a lead, I can go on a call, find out what they need, and sell them that specific solution. Yeah, that's the logic. The logic is, if I just speak broadly, I don't eliminate anybody, I don't exclude anybody, I get leads from all sorts of people, and then I figure out how I can help them. That's the logic. But that logic doesn't work because people don't resonate with your offer because they don't see how it helps them in their situation. Right? If I was going, let me give you an example. I'm not good at photo shoots. I find them really uncomfortable, and I know I need more of the fancy photos that make me look insightful and all that bullshit that we need to do on the internet these days, right? But I feel really uncomfortable doing them. I don't like doing them. It just feels weird. So the fact that, and to be fair, our internal team have tried to do photos. I've had other photographers try to do them, and I look at the photos afterwards, and I'm never really happy with them. And I've tried this many, many times and come out with photos that I didn't like. This year, I went to somebody and hired somebody to do photos of me because they said they worked with people who were a little uncomfortable and a little unsettled working on photos, or people who feel awkward taking photos. So I went and I paid some money, more than I would pay for an average photographer, because I wanted those photos. And I came out and I was a lot happier with the photos I got. So people will pay for expertise when they see that expertise meets their specific need. And what happens here is we get locked into, well, if I can just like make it a little bit generic, I can just appeal to a bit wider a group, and that'll work for me. It doesn't work. It really doesn't work because you don't have the budget, and all you're doing is you're making a decision to make your marketing more complicated. You're making a decision to increase the confusion and the friction between you and your target audience. So if I could say, photographer, okay, I can do photography, right? What problem am I solving? Great wedding photo pictures, business people, I was going to say funerals. You don't hire a photographer for funerals. I run a funeral. Well, maybe I've just invented a new industry. There's weddings, there's there's business headshots. There's all sorts of different types of photography, number one, but there's also the reasons why people might choose that photographer over another. And it can be things like they feel awkward, they don't feel comfortable. It could be pet photography. But what you're looking for is an angle on your service to say, like, hang on a minute, what does it solve specifically? Yes, we need great wedding photos and we don't want, awkward wedding photos, but what's the other angle? For me, the photographer, it was, actually, you're good with awkward people, and I'm pretty awkward when I'm on photos, right? So that was the selling point for me. Now, some people call this niching down, and it can be niching down. I don't call it niching down per se, because what I say to people is, if you can build out a little corner of the internet or a little corner of your market that you are known for, that, I help people who are awkward and feel uncomfortable taking photos to feel more comfortable and get those fun pictures where they look like they're enjoying themselves. If you can build that out and get a really strong reputation there and make money there, you can do what Coca-Cola does. So Coca-Cola started with Coca-Cola. They started with one drink. And then as they got successful with that one drink, they launched another drink and another drink and another drink. So for me, niching down is choosing to put yourself in a box permanently. What I'm talking about is narrowing down to get success so you can take on other segments of the market, like Coca-Cola. But what many people do is think, well, hang on a minute, if I just go big at the beginning, I'll have more chances of success. But what happens is our message isn't clear, there's no clarity, we create friction. Whereas if I go, hang on a minute, I'm selling photography for people who are awkward on camera, Dean, right? That becomes, okay, next question is, who will want that photography? Business owners who feel awkward. Oh, now I've got a real audience I can go after. And not just any audience. We need to find, point 2, a high value audience. So a high value audience for our offer is people who feel awkward on camera. And I'm a photographer. This is a great example. I still can't believe I said funeral photographer. That probably is a niche that's coming, right? So I'm a photographer and I've chosen to help people who feel awkward on camera. Point 2, high value audience. Who's going to pay a lot of money for that? Well, first off, rich people, obviously. People who've got money. But it's where the stakes of the photograph are so high. So think about it like this. And if you start to go, well, okay, offer, right? Clearly defined offer. So I'm going to do photography for people who are awkward on camera. Who is the most high paying, who will appreciate that offer the most? Who will benefit from that the most? And who has the most money? But importantly, that I can find them. I can find them, right? Now, okay, here we go. So I'm looking at who, for this photography business that I'm going to launch, who that helps people who are awkward on camera, who are those people? Right. So can I find them? So obviously, CEOs are going to be a big one. Big companies, people in big companies, where they've got very high profile, where image is important. So image, you have to be image conscious industries, number 1. Number 2, they need to be companies where basically the price of a photo shoot is not exorbitant. So you start to think about that. And here's my rule of how I think about that. I always look for, is there, when I'm looking at a target audience, I'm going to sell something to them. I often relate it to, how does my price look compared to their price? So what do I mean? If I'm selling something for £100,000 to a client, I would be looking and going, okay, £100,000. How they perceive that £100,000 will be directly related to their business and what's going on in their business. So if I'm selling a £100,000 thing to a company that sells, I don't know, £50 things, it will look like a lot of money, and my value, that what I've got to deliver, really has to stack up as a big business case. It's got to be a big business case to spend £100,000 when their average sale price is 50. However, if their average sale price is £500,000 and I'm offering £100,000, the business case is a bit, it's not as big an amount of money. So I always look at it as, how does this stack up to the size of their revenue? How does it stack up to the size of the salary out of the person I'm working to? So I'm looking for reference points to help me see how will they perceive this price. And so that gives me a tale of who's the best audience. So already I'm thinking about my photography business for awkward people on camera. I'm thinking about, I want to do a $4,000, $5,000 shoot because I want to do a proper, real thing that really makes them feel at ease, give them a great experience, that works. $4,000 or $5,000 shoot. Who would pay for a $4,000 or $5,000 shoot? Well, a startup solopreneur isn't going to do that. Well, they'd be mad if they did. So you start looking and going, where do I go? Okay, image conscious, $4,000 or $5,000 lawyers. Lawyers in city law firms, straight away. Lawyers in city law firms, CEOs of law firms, people who are heavily in image. If you notice in the legal industry, by the way, and the consulting industry, when you get hired, particularly if you're a partners of law firms, they put out press releases to say that you've been hired. You put out insights. They basically leverage you. So I could do a $4,000 or $5,000 shoot with lawyers, and particularly partners of law firms, not small law firms, but mid-sized law firms and Silver Circle. They would be prepared to pay that because it's about image. It's about their professional reputation, and they value that really highly. What about politicians? What about people who are running as MPs? What about all those people? They would invest in that because they want campaign imagery and all that kind of stuff. So suddenly you start to think about, who is this high value audience? Based on, I'm doing photography and people are awkward. And so now I've got a clearly defined offer. I'm going to help people do a photo shoot, but I'm going to make them feel uncomfortable. Because they feel uncomfortable with photo shoots, I'm going to make them at ease. I'm going to make them come out naturally. They're going to look happy. They're going to look enjoying themselves, all of that kind of stuff, so that they get those pictures that make them look confident, relaxed, and that they're happy to use them. Great. I've got the offer. Now I find the high value audience for that. And sometimes I have to go back and forth a little bit just to tweak things, because I realize certain things as I start to look at the high value audience. But I look at the high value audience and go, who'll pay top drawer for that so I can give the best service, give the best results, and I come up with it. And now I can craft my message, which is point number 3, the magnetic message. If I now know I'm helping people look amazing in photographs who feel awkward in front of cameras and don't feel very confident in front of cameras, and I know that that's lawyers, partners of law firms and consulting firms, large consulting firms. I've got those two things together. Now I can create the message that draws them in and helps me communicate my offer more effectively, which is, are you a lawyer or a partner in a consulting firm and you want to build your reputation? You want to showcase your confidence and how great you are, but you feel uncomfortable going in front of cameras and in front of to get photos done. But you know that your professional image, sharing in magazines and getting your photo and your name out there is really important. I can help you. I do photo shoots for people who are top of their game, but feel awkward in front of camera. Here's what I do. And suddenly I've now crafted a really powerful message that speaks directly to them. And this is all stripping away all of that friction, all of that stuff that holds people back. Because now they're saying, yeah, I've had photo shoots before and they came out and I didn't like it. It was awkward. I don't even want to use the pictures. I look at myself and go, what the hell did I do? Yeah, I can speak to all of that. And now I can get clarity in my head of who I'm talking to, what matters to them. I can start to research what matters to them. I can start to put content around that, giving them things that they can do to look as more confident. I can showcase how I help somebody look more confident. I can do all of that stuff. And it speaks directly to them. And to put it in a LinkedIn context, imagine I was connecting with partners of law firms and consulting firms right now. And I started to do this. I started to show all of this stuff. Now I'm starting to cut through. Now I'm starting to resonate. Now they're starting to see why my stuff is valuable, because I'm not just speaking to their pains, awkward in front of cameras and horrific pictures. I'm actually showing how I've helped people get it, and they can see, here's a law firm. Here's a partner of a law firm I just took photos for, and look how good they are. They can start to see it. And now I'm carving out my little Underdog brand of law firms, awkward on camera photography, or professional services firms, consulting firms, partners, and awkward on camera. And now I've got a valuable business. Now I've got something I can market. Now I've got something that really resonates, and we can get excited about it. We can start sharing stuff. It's focused. It's niche. But we're not staying there, and we don't have to stay there. We can build out a corner of our business that really works and really does well, and then we can bolt in different things that resonate, but we do it from a position of strength. Because every time you add something into your business, I'm going to help coaches, and then I'm going to help lawyers, and you increase the potential confusion. So you have to increase the marketing. You have to increase the way you communicate. So it requires more effort, more energy, and more money. But now I've got something exciting. I've built an offer. I've got an offer that solves a problem. I've got an audience, a high-value audience. Now I build the message around that offer. So I explain how that adds value. I do all of that. I put a content strategy together. So this all now lines up. But the final part of this, and I know I've been a long-winded session today, podcast today, but I think it's valuable. If more people got this, they'd make a hell of a lot more money. Instead, they go round and round in circles, trying to figure out what's wrong with themselves, trying to figure out what's wrong with their business, questioning their advice, questioning their expertise, getting pissed off seeing less experienced people thriving and them struggling. All of that happens. The next thing is the system to actually do it. You see, marketing is not just an art, it's a science. Yep. And there is an element of experimentation, but there is also process. You have to literally have a process of how you go from, okay, I've got attention. How do I convert that attention? I've got people in my network. How do I move them into a serious conversation? And that requires a plan. Now, all that work we've just done, the offer, the high-value audience, the magnetic messaging, now comes into a system of how do I use all of that to take people on a journey to becoming a client? What are the steps in the process? But because we've done all of that, we can design a very simple time-saving system that just works for that group. I can create lead magnets, I can create webinars, I can create an outreach strategy, I can create an email campaign, I can create content. All of that stuff now gets simpler because I know who I'm talking to, what I'm going to be selling, the angles, the pain points, the challenges, and then I put that process in place. And not just put the time-saving system in place and play lip service to it. Go into your diary and go, on Mondays, I'm going to do this. On Tuesdays, I'm going to do this. On Wednesdays, I'm going to do this. This is what my follow-up strategy looks like. This is what my email strategy looks like. And then you can go, well, I've got 2-3 hours a week to market this. What's the best thing I can do? And this is the Underdog piece. What if I can only give 3 hours? And this is where you have to have a bit of honesty with yourself. Because what happens is we get excited by a strategy. You see something on LinkedIn. You see somebody explaining something. You see an ad for something about how it blew up and they got 900 customers in 3 minutes. You see all of that stuff and you get excited about the outcome. and never really ground it to, okay, I like the idea of getting 90 customers in 3 minutes because that advertisement on Facebook showed me it. I like that. I'm so excited. I'd love to have that scenario. I'd love that to be true. I want that. We get so excited about the outcome. We don't actually think about, how am I going to do this? Where's the time to do this? Do I realistically have the skill set to do this? Is this the way I want to do this? You have to ask yourself all of these questions, because if you don't, you end up in a situation where you start something you can't see through. You start something you can't finish. And so when I'm working with clients, I look at, what's the time you've actually got that you know you can stick to, and you won't just go, I didn't have time this week. Because realistically, what most people tell me is they don't want to be spending hours and hours and hours every day marketing themselves. They don't want to do that. They want something that's simple, that works, that's repeatable, that's reliable, and they don't have to worry about it. They just do the work. That's what we want. That's what people tell me they want. But what happens is they are unrealistic on what time they will allocate to it or can allocate to it. So when I'm working with people, I will design a system and go, you got 45 minutes a day, you got 15 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day. Let's build that underdog plan so that you're not doing that, you're not doing that, you're not doing that, because you won't sustain that. That will not sustain itself. You will burn out trying to do all that stuff because you don't have the time to do it. Then you'll get guilty, angry at yourself, all that stuff. We're going to do this, just this thing here. We're going to do this thing here, this tiny little thing, this little bit. That's what we're going to do. And that's what I tell people to do. Because if you can do that one thing really well and it cuts through, you get the clients, you win the clients, you make some money, and then you can go, well, now I've got some good money coming in. I've got some systems working. How can I take a slice of that money that's coming in to either upskill me, to give me better resources in terms of manpower or technology? What can I do to kind of expand from that? And this is what it is. This is how I think. And this is how people should think. If I make some money through a simple system that works with the time I've got, and I get a surplus of that money and put it towards expanding that out, developing that out and building it out so it makes more money. And that might be people, that might be expertise, that might be technology. That's how we do it. But as simple as I got one client recently and I said, just do your audio events. Just do audio events. Yeah, post if you can, but don't worry about anything else. Because they only had a finite amount of time and I want them to achieve success. So they need to do the critical things that will give them the time, give them the success. Everything else, right, is a nice to have. And I would love them to be posting 5 times a week. I'd love them to be engaging with their audience on LinkedIn every day. I'd love them to be doing building an email list. I'd love them to be doing lead magnets. I'd love them to be doing all sorts of things. But the reality is, you have to have a system that works with what you've got, not what you'd like to have. And you build that system, you get that working, you make that money, and then reinvest, whether that's in yourself, whether that's in other people, whether that's in ads, what have you, you reinvest to be able to give you the capability to fight as a bigger underdog. Yeah. And that's the process. And this is where I see so many people struggling, is because they're end to end, we call it OHMs, the offer, the high value audience, the magnetic message, and the time saving system. Yeah. Has to all tie together. It has to be practical. It has to work with your time. So you end up with actually a result. And yes, you can try and adopt that Coca-Cola strategy of trying to sell Tango and Coke and Costa Coffee. I didn't realize Costa Coffee was owned by Coke, by the way. You can try and do all of that stuff. and say, hey, I help you with fizzy drinks. But it's much easier to say, hey, do you want Coca-Cola? And this is what Coca-Cola did. They started with one brand, they got one brand selling and flying, and then they brought more in. And what I see is business owners trying to be the soft drinks company. They try to be a mini Coca-Cola as Coca-Cola is in 2024. They try to go, well, we can do a little bit of Coke, we can do a little bit of Tango, we can do a little bit of Dr. Pepper, we can do a little bit of Costa Coffee. And that's what they try and do. The soft drinks company, Scrub Costa. So they're trying to sell, effectively, soft drinks, but to 3 different audiences in 3 different flavors. And that takes energy, effort, all of that stuff. So they try to be the mini Coca-Cola as 2024. And what I argue for is we need to go back to where Coca-Cola was at the very beginning when they launched that original drink, not with the cocaine in it. Yeah, not with the cocaine in it. But when they launched the original drink, they just wanted that drink to be successful. That's your position. Let's be an underdog with photography, awkward people, or awkward on camera, partners of law firms and professional services firms. That's what I'm going to do. Build the message out, build the services out, get that done, run a system to deliver that, and then go, do you know what? We could do this for accountants too. That's the next bit. But then you can do it from a position of strength where you've got money in the bank, you've got time to invest in it, whilst your lawyer gig and your partners of professional services gig is just running and running and running and running and running. That's how you really make an impact in 2024 and in 2025. It's not by playing the games of other people. It's by carving out your own strategy and operating like the underdog and understanding you're the underdog and playing a game to win as the underdog. And so many people try and play the mini Coca-Cola game rather than win as the underdog. And for me, you win every time when you're the underdog and you play to your strengths of what you've got, not what you'd like to have. So OHMs offer high-value audience, magnetic message, time-saving system. You get those right, name it, nail it down, you make a lot of money and you'll build a great business and you'll love every minute of doing it.